Cyclone MMA. So, what is next for Paddy Pimblett? Who's next in line for the Paddy Pimblett sweepstakes? Because his most recent fight, we saw him fight Jared Gordon. It was a decision that a lot of people thought Jared Gordon won. Paddy Pimblett wins it. Okay. He says it's not close. Okay. What's next? Let's move on from it. The past is the past. What's going on next? I have a list full of fighters who I think are reasonable opponents to give him, but we have to keep a few things in mind. Paddy Pimblett is a hot commodity for the UFC, right? He's a guy with a big following. He's got a big social media presence. He's got deals with Barstool Sports. He has a lot of fans. People come out, they wear the wigs. They look silly showing up to the stadium, watching him fight. So you don't want to rush his development if you're the UFC. With that being said, these are fights I think that make sense. I feel like these are fights where at the point where he's at, he's got 4 wins in the UFC on paper, 3 finishes, 1 decision. Let's move him up a little bit. Let's not have him keep fighting chumps, okay? So here's where I'm going. My first option, let's see a Jared Gordon rematch. You said it wasn't a close fight. Everyone in the world disagrees with you. It was a close fight that most people think Jared Gordon won. Do a rematch. Give the guy a bone. Jared Gordon, I think, deserves a rematch. Will this happen? Probably not. I think they want to move on. I don't think they want to be stuck in the past already, not even in the top 15. But I think Jared Gordon deserves it, and I think it's still an interesting fight. I think it's still a fight that Paddy can win. With that being said, I think it's a fight that Jared Gordon can win. The next option, which I think is a pretty solid one, and I think it's an interesting one, give him Tony Ferguson. Tony Ferguson is a veteran, and he seems like that guy who eventually is going to be fed to the new breed. In fact, he kind of has been. You have Charles Oliveira and Beneil Dariush, and he fought Michael Chandler. He's been kind of fed to the lions a little bit. He's still a big name. People still love to see him fight. He's ranked number 15. He wants to fight. I think it would be good for both Paddy Pimblett and Tony Ferguson to make this fight, because Tony Ferguson, I think, can beat Paddy Pimblett. I don't think Paddy just goes in there and beats him up and finishes him. Tony Ferguson is still a durable guy. I know he got finished by Michael Chandler, but if you look at that kick, who does that not finish? That knocks out a lot of people. Ferguson's still a beast. I think it would be a fight to make sense. I think it's a fight where if Paddy Pimblett wins, congrats UFC, you have a little bit more hype on his name, despite Tony Ferguson being the shell of his former self. But I feel like it makes sense. Another option, one that they absolutely won't go with, is Drew Dober. We just saw Drew Dober knock out Bobby Green. He was getting pieced up by Bobby Green, but Drew Dober's a tank. He puts on fun action fights, which Paddy Pimblett usually does as well. That would be an action fight. It'd be one where if they're standing, Drew Dober has the advantage. If they're on the ground, then Paddy Pimblett very well could have the advantage. But I think that's fun. I think it's a fight that they tried making already. And I think with Drew Dober's win over Bobby Green, who's a pretty big name, and Dober's name is not all that small himself, I feel like that makes sense. I feel like that makes sense, and I feel like that'd be a fun-ass fight, and no matter who won that, I think it helps the UFC. I think Drew Dober, making him a star, that also works. He's a Michael Chandler type fighter. He goes out there and he puts on spectacular performances. And another fighter who fits that same ilk is Terrence McKinney. Action fighter. If you see his fight against Drew Dober, who he lost to, that fight was crazy. And Terrence McKinney went right after him. He was right in his face. He was hurting Dober bad. He was dropping him. He ended up getting finished in that first round. But it was the tale of 2 fights in one single round. I think that's another fight where the UFC is not going to give this to Paddy Pimblett. But if they did, it would be really, really fun. And once again, you could be promoting Terrence McKinney if he is able to get a W over Paddy Pimblett. And likewise, if Paddy Pimblett goes in there and submits Terrence McKinney, people are going to start taking this dude really seriously, because Terrence McKinney is a damn good fighter. In Terrence McKinney's last 8 fights, all of them ended in the first round. Win or lose. He won most of them, but he either wins or loses in the first round. He goes after it. It would be a fun fight. It could be fight of the night. It could be fight of the year. It could be epic. Next, we're looking away from the lightweight division where Paddy lives, and we're going to go down to featherweight. I'm not saying Paddy's going to drop weight to featherweight. I know he's done that before, but we're not expecting him to do that. We're going to see Ilia Topuria, the ranked featherweight, go up in weight to fight Paddy Pimblett because Ilia wants that fight. There's hype there. There's a lot of bad blood between these two fighters, and I want to see this happen. With that being said, I think Ilia outmatches Paddy Pimblett right now, and the UFC probably doesn't want to go that route. My final one. This is the one I'd like to see. I'd like to see all of these, but this one right now I think is cool because Renato Moicano, Manny Moicano, has become a star as of recently. He's been in his post-fight interviews. He's been just off the walls crazy. Moicano wants money, he says, and then a few fights ago he asked for Instagram followers, and I just saw the numbers rise and rise and rise and rise. The dude's crazy on the mic. The dude's crazy in the cage. He's ranked number 13 in the lightweight division. I think whoever wins this fight, their stock increases dramatically. I think if Moicano beats Paddy Pimblett, he becomes a star. I think if Paddy Pimblett beats Moicano, once again, everyone's taking this dude super seriously. He becomes a ranked opponent, and he is even more of a star than he already is. And Moicano he's trying to get this fight. He's been posting stuff on Twitter. He wants that money, and this fight would produce some money. So Moicano versus Pimblett, I think that's a cool fight too. Now, a lot of these I think are long shots. I think a lot of these I think the opponents are too tough for Paddy, and that's not a jab at him. I just don't think the UFC is going to go that route. I think he'll have 2 or 3 more kind of fights that he should be able to win, fights that he'll be the favorite in before he even tries to crack the top 15. It'll be interesting. It'll be interesting to see the development of Paddy Pimblett. I know Sean O'Malley's another guy who's been accused of, taking it slow, but sometimes it's good for guys. And clearly with Sean O'Malley, it's worked out. He kind of got lucky the position he's in now is kind of lucky because he had the fight with Pedro Munoz where there was the eye poke. And so that fight didn't even really happen. We saw a round of that. Sean O'Malley enters the rankings based on that. And then you had the Petr Yan fight, which everyone thought Sean O'Malley lost, but he ended up getting gifted the victory. And it was a close fight. Sean O'Malley proved that he's a beast. And so Sean O'Malley's in a really good position right now. So I feel like they're going to do the same thing with Paddy Pimblett and hope that he can win a few more fights, outside of the top 15 and then maybe crack his way into it with favorable matchups. But that's the cynical aspect of me thinking that. But I'm throwing some options to the UFC. I think these are all cool ideas. I think you guys would enjoy these fights. I think they'd be awesome. Maybe Paddy wouldn't be the favorite going into a lot of these, but not hating on the dude. He's a fun fighter. Excited to see what he does next, but let's do Tony Ferguson versus Paddy Pimblett. Come on. Let's do that.